We hope you enjoy this podcast. All our conversations are inspired by films we have selected to appear on SDG.vision. So go and take a look and be inspired by people and organisations who are making valuable contributions to the Sustainable Development Goals and making our world a better place for everybody to live. Now, sit back, enjoy, be inspired, and afterwards, go and take action.
Well, it's the SDG Vision podcast once again, and today we're delighted to be joined by Martin Fielko from the Collective Leadership Institute. Martin, hello.
Hello, Pierre. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. And whereabouts are you joining us from today?
Yeah, currently I'm joining from Potsdam. That is where our headquarters is.
And that's what's just outside of Berlin, is it? Or a little bit outside of Berlin?
Yes, exactly.
Smashing. And are you located, is the Collective Leadership Institute located anywhere else at all in the world?
For sure, yeah. We have other locations. We also have an office, like a legal office in South Africa, in Cape Town. So this is our legal structure, both Global North and Global South. And then we have so-called branch offices. So there are no legal offices, but we have people in other places, in Cairo, in Kiev, in New York, who are working for us.
Intriguing. And I'm sure we'll find out what you're doing in those various locations as the podcast conversation continues. Firstly, though, we became aware of the Collective Leadership Institute through watching a film called Olo's Story, Young Peacebuilders. And we were really quite taken by it, and we thought, well, we need to investigate this a bit further, and so we reached out to you, and we're delighted that you could join us. First things first, perhaps, is what is the Collective Leadership Institute, and what is collective leadership?
Yeah, I try to make it easy, although it's a complex story behind it. So the Collective Leadership Institute, it was founded in 2005, and the basic idea that we promote is partnerships. Yeah, partnerships. That sounds very easy, but we also observe that this is very often missing in many things that we do, be it like international collaboration or also on a very local level. So I think partnerships got more recognition in 2015. At that time, when the SDGs came up. As you know, we are here at SDG Visions. Like SDG 17 is one SDG which is about partnerships at all. So we are focusing on those that are mentioned in subgoals 16 and 17, the multi-stakeholder partnerships. So partnerships that are between the private sector, the public sector, and civil society. Because we truly believe that when those sectors work together, that, more is happening than if they work in isolation, and that we can advance sustainability with that. And maybe to add on this, how we do this practically, we are working on 4 pillars. One is our academy, where we train people in certain methodologies on how to build such partnerships, how to maintain them, how to scale them. The second pillar is we do long-term projects on this, where we go into certain countries or regions and work on specific topics, be it energy, be it water management, be it peace building, and work with stakeholder systems there. The third part is the so-called methodology and research pillar. So all what we do is also grounded on certain research and strong and robust methodologies we work with. And the fourth part is movement building and certification. And I think you also added this, what is collective leadership actually? What do we understand behind it is, first of all, I want to say what we don't understand with it, because if you Google collective leadership and you land at the Wikipedia page for it, you learn something about, some communist ideas behind it. So we are not communists. That's what I want to say. Basically, what our idea is behind collective leadership, that it combines the best of both worlds, like your individual strength, both as a leader, but as a person as well, with the collective strengths. So those things that you can only do together and that you cannot solve in isolation. And when individual and collective comes together, this is where collective leadership happens, and this is what we promote.
Interesting. And as you say, that's in different sectors with different sort of actors in each sector, or organizations and people in each sector. Is there a sort of a cross-cutting thing? Is sustainability and peace building a cross-cutting theme in that, or are you open to be engaged, I don't know, in different scenarios or different issues with collective leadership? Is it very broad, or is it sort of more focused?
Yeah, it is both at the same time, I would say. Like, we are very broad because we don't come in because somebody says like, oh yeah, we need to partner a little bit better. No, we come in because people say, look, we have this, for example, energy partnership here, but it doesn't work properly. And those people are very focused on the top technical topic of energy. Yeah. And then we come in not as energy experts, but as the experts for partnerships. And then we create the system together with those partners, and we capacitate those partners that it works well towards the topic of energy. Yeah, but those, I think, again, the SDGs are a great framework for that. Yeah, so if you look at the 16 SDGs that come before the 17th, there you have the technical topics we are working on, and then we come in and infuse a partnership sense into these systems. I think this describes best how we work and what we promote.
Yeah, and I was really interested in your website. You mentioned sort of a requirement for a paradigm shift in terms of thinking. And I suppose the economic system we live under highlights individualism. And I guess you're saying, no, we need that. Of course we do, but we need to bring people together to work. Are you actively using the SDGs as a framework, or is it always just a reference, or it's an important reference point for you?
Yeah, it's definitely a framework also for us. Yeah, as I've explained already, if you start working on sustainability, you will sooner or later identify, okay, I can work on this particular topic of sustainability, but what I do or don't do will create, because it's so complex and interconnected, it will create either positive or negative contributions to other SDGs. Yeah, so therefore, it's very important for us to look at the whole SDG agenda as a comprehensive framework that shows, all, maybe not all, but most aspects that matter. Yeah. And then say, what could be my individual contribution to this? What could be the collective contribution to this? Yeah. And then things start moving. Sometimes slow, very often slow actually, and not always in the best directions. But that's then where our expertise comes in. You need to deal with the different speeds that are in those systems. You need to deal with different leadership styles with different cultures, with different forms of dialogue, and so forth. I think we will dive perhaps a little bit deeper in all of these topics later in the conversation. But this is the core, I would say. Yeah. So the SDG agenda is a great framework for sustainability because it's understood everywhere in the world. Yeah. When you talk about it, at least the technical topics behind it, it's not so well understood how we achieve them, and our contribution to achieve them. It's one puzzle piece, I guess, is this collective leadership idea, and that is what we bring on the table. That's our contribution. And then people pick it up and do their own contributions locally, regionally, internationally, in whatever context they are.
Now, the Young Peace Builders program that we saw with Olo, and we've learned a little bit about that, and we really do encourage people to have a look at that on the platform. It's part of your work. How did it begin, and I guess how does it align with the sort of the mission that you've stated already?
Yeah, that's a little bit a longer story, I can say. Although the program is not so old, it was established in 2024, but it has a longer history for certain reasons. So I think since 2012, we are running a program called Young Leaders for Sustainability. And this used to be a quite open program where we invited people that are 35 years or younger from all over the world to work on sustainability topics and build their leadership skills in that area. And then the program changed over time from an open to more tailored programs and so forth. And then under the impression of the ongoing conflicts, both in Ukraine and also in the Levant, we decided we need to do something more specifically on peace. And luckily, one of our managing partners had a good contact to an American foundation who was willing to give some seed money into that program. At that time, beginning of 2024. And that's how the idea was born to adapt the Young Leaders for Sustainability program into a more specialized young peace builders program. And what we thought is important, if we invite young people to become peace builders, or if they are already to advance their skills in that area, was to think about like two areas. The one is the outer peace, how to bring peace into communities, into larger stakeholder systems, in the best case into countries and between countries. That's not where we are at the moment. I can also reveal that. We are more on the community level with most of the young peace builders, but also to work on the inner peace of people, of the participants themselves. So we had these two dimensions in mind, both working on the inner peace of the persons we work with, that they can overcome certain traumata that they might have, or certain bad experiences in their past work, to really shape also the outer peace part of the program and develop, in the beginning, very small change initiatives that work towards peace. So this is the idea how it was. And in the first cohort, when we sent out the open call, there were, I guess, something around 35 applications worldwide. So it was quite short-term notice, and so we really carefully selected 10 of them. And this year we had not more, but almost 300 applications already. So we see there's a certain need for this kind of program. And once the first cohort was there, and Olo, whom you mentioned already, was among our first cohort, and those stories are out there, what these people did with the program, we see like now more and more young people want to jump on and also want to become young peace builders.
There's a lot in that, I think. I love your approach in terms of inner peace and outer peace. And I think this shows your sort of holistic thinking and approach to work. How does this work? Do they come to Germany for the program, or do you go to them and work with them in their communities? How does the process work?
Yeah, if I say now, unfortunately not, in terms of they come to Germany or we go to them. It is a little bit misleading. Of course, it would be more fortunate if we really interact with these persons in person, but the whole program is online. Yeah, this has budgetary reasons, but it really showed now that we are through it with the first cohort and now working with the second cohort in 2025, that it feels in the beginning a little bit as a hurdle that we just meet virtually. But towards the end of the program, like after 9 months, it really feels as a community, although people are really from all parts of the world. I think we have, apart from Australia, we had already participants from all continents. So the online program also helps us in that way, because it's making things equal for each and everyone. Yeah, so people cannot show off. They rather have to accept the rules that everything is online. We have to be strict on time. All these kind of things that online brings with it. And at the same time, as we are working on this equal level, people feel, and also with these models quite effectively, people feel free to even organize their own sessions then easily, via WhatsApp or some other groups. They're co-organizing some events that are outside the real schedule. So this is a precondition, as I've said, like you need to work online. Also, this excludes perhaps certain interesting persons, but we have to find some compromises somewhere.
Resources and sustainability. It's saving air flights as well, which is great. So you have your participants. They're from different cultures, different in terms of conflict or whatever. There might be different types of conflict. Well, what's the value of this sort of intercultural dialogue? Is there a value in it? Presumably there is. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, as you said, there is definitely a value in it. I see it in two ways. The one way is, of course, as we have the selection process and people first need to apply in writing, and then we have short interviews online with them. We hear or feel already whether these persons have a certain sense for intercultural dialogue, if they're capable to do that. So, and also, as we've mentioned earlier, the concept of collective leadership, intercultural dialogue is a key concept of that. Yeah. And that's the second thing. It becomes such a natural thing that it's not center stage anymore while we are doing this program, because then we can rather focus on the concrete challenges, those participants bring with it. And these are, very diverse. Some are in a obvious conflict area, like eastern part of Democratic Republic of Congo, or they are based within Ukraine. And so where it's very clear where the conflict is, and it's, everybody knows it from the news. But we also have other participants, for example, from South Africa, who are working there in the poor areas of bigger cities, where it's not so obvious, but there's also violence. There's also, we don't define in this case peace as the absence of war. We really define it as something where everybody has the chance to thrive and to, become a person and contribute to the society in the way he or she wants. And therefore, it's also, during these intercultural dialogues to talk about each individual case, to really use the collective intelligence of all in the room, not only the facilitators from the Collective Leadership Institute, but also that we have these peer coaching exercises and so on, that the young peace builders among themselves learn to help themselves. That's the basic idea.
It's an interesting concept, isn't it? Because when you say about peace or violence, one obviously, most people think about, situations such as in the Ukraine and Congo. But people, as you mentioned with South Africa, often violence is not readily apparent, but it can be structural. So it can be inequality in a society, or there may be restrictions on free speech, or which in a way are a form of violence. It's impeding people's ability to lead their lives as they would like to, or their communities to lead their lives as they would like to. How has that worked in terms of, say, for example, you've got somebody from Congo or Ukraine talking about physical violence that is being meted out to their community, or whatever, and then somebody who maybe the violence is more institutional. It is less apparent. What's the value of that? How does that play out in terms of, as you say, you have your sort of peer-to-peer support, and you presumably discuss them as almost like case studies, really, I suppose. It's intriguing, really, as to the value of somebody who is experiencing structural violence as opposed to the immediate physical violence. How does that play out? Have you got any examples of how that has benefited both ways, really?
Yeah. I think I started to answer this again a little bit with the SDGs and then become more concrete on the individual level. So if you look at the SDGs, then working on peace is obviously SDG 16, right? So it's about strong institutions. It's about peaceful societies. It's about, let's talk about democracy as well. Yeah, democracy is one important factor for bringing about peace as well. So, but these are more, as you said, structural things. When you then look to the next one, the SDG 17, and which is about partnerships, you see the correlation between the two. That's what we observed in the work with the people, that those structural things that you mentioned, for example, in South Africa, where there's such a big difference between the rich and the poor, and some form of exclusion, is that if you take the opposite of partnerships, this is basically like hierarchy, right? So you put certain things in an order and say, like, one thing is better than the other, rather than they are on an eye level. And this is what we observe when we bring it down to this to this level. Like, let's overcome certain hierarchies in the system and let's work more on partnerships. This not automatically, but this is a good, horizon to work towards too. And this is also something practical that you can do even in societies that are, strongly hierarchical and, where there's a dictator in power and no democratic government and, all these kind of things. And then now making it more concrete, even we work on like 3 different pillars. And one is, again, the individual. Yeah. So what do I have to do with it? How does the system shape me in that way? What kind of hierarchical structures are within me and how can I overcome them more towards partnerships? Then we go into the systemic analysis, looking around my community, saying like, who is around me? What kind of people are these? What are their strengths, but also what are their challenges? Why are those challenges? Why do they exist? And then we observe while doing this and putting individual and collective or systemic together again, we identify entry points. And those entry points are chances where there's a match. And then the third thing, what we do is processes. Yeah. So on the process level, this is where the real change then happens, and saying, okay, what are the first, second, and third step? And if the third step doesn't work, what is maybe the fourth? So also being flexible and agile about it, and to create such processes that we overcome the hierarchical structures that are around us, work more towards partnerships, and then become more peaceful communities in the first place, but perhaps over longer time also societies. So that's a little bit what they intend to do with the program, and how participants work with it, and how also they connect, being from very diverse contexts. When they discover this, there are certain similar patterns behind this kind of obvious or not so obvious violence.
Could you give us an example of what of those entry points could be, for example?
Yeah, so there we work very methodological, and our methodology for this is the collective leadership compass. Yeah, so we look at 6. It's a little bit more complex even in practice and in the courses and so on, but I try to bring it down to 6 patterns of human interaction that are present, more or less present in every collaboration. Yeah, and those are about future possibilities, collective intelligence, engagement, humanity, wholeness, and innovation. Yeah, so these are this is the methodology and the rationale behind it, is that these are ingredients that you need for every good collaboration. As I said, in reality, it's even more complex. But to make it practical, these are the 6 we look at with those young peace builders. And then we do an analysis of themselves and of the system and see where is the biggest overlap. If it's, for example, innovation, saying like, okay, this system you're working on, it has not the challenge is really collective intelligence because people are working in isolation and they want to do their own thing. but they are capable of doing innovations in their societies or communities. And it's also your personal strengths. This is how we identify entry points. Say, okay, this is maybe the point where we should start, where you should start because you find this overlap. Yeah, so this goes also a little bit in debates that we currently have worldwide around polarization and so on. We don't see polarization really as a challenge in the way that cannot be overcome, because we need those polarizations as well. But this is how you can make them workable for collaboration, saying like, okay, we don't need to agree on all the 6 dimensions of the compass from the beginning. That would be quite unrealistic. But if we could at least agree on one thing that we both are interested in, that's where we could start, and we can bring in our different viewpoints. And yeah, as I've said, with the example of innovation, this could be, I don't know, working on a certain prototype for a new community, whatever, invention or whatsoever. Yeah, something that fosters innovation among the stakeholder system. But from there, you put in the other ingredients step by step, and this is a longer process.
Could we use perhaps an example? I mean, we've seen Olo in the film, and we're delighted to say, thanks to your introduction, Martin, we'll have a podcast with Olo.
It's great.
Yeah, no, it's terrific. It really is. So we're looking forward to that. So perhaps we'll discuss that with Olo. Could you think of another young person in your Young Peace Builders program that you've worked with who went on to make sort of a tangible impact in their community?
Yeah, of course, it's like hard to pick like one for now. But maybe to one story that also inspired me very much, more on a personal level, because that is geographically closest to me, because I have very strong ties to Eastern Europe, is one young lady called Anastasia from Ukraine. And she made both a great personal development during this program, but also how she adapted the work that she was doing during this time. Because maybe to start her story, she used to work, or no, she still works for an NGO that is promoting cycling. Yeah, so even before the full-scale invasion and so on, they wanted this kind of cycling as a cheap and environmentally friendly solution to traffic challenges in bigger cities. And so she runs this NGO. And then, of course, she was in Eastern Ukraine and needed was also under occupation for 2 months and needed to flee then to the western part, to Kiev, and then needed to decide, do I still continue under these new circumstances my NGO or not, or what can I do? And she was even very shy to apply for the program because her English was not so great. But she did. Also with this idea, can we not use cycling under these new conditions in some other way that it contributes to peaceful communities? And during the program, she actually discovered, hey, I mean, we have serious challenges here in the Ukraine, and one of them is energy. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, everybody knows it from the news, I think. So if I put my NGO activity now under something promoting cycling for saving energy, that the army or others can use more of the energy, but when we in bigger cities like Kiev, where she's based now, do more cycling, that it also contributes indirectly to the country's resilience in terms of energy supply. And she created great concepts. She even further developed it into programs that also talk about bike safety. Yeah, because of course we hear the news when somebody like civilians got dead because of attacks there, but still things like especially in bigger cities in Kiev and so on, traffic accidents still cause a lot of victims in in Ukraine. So she could connect all these stories and all these facts and so on to a new story of her NGO that thrives now again, because people see there is an added value in promoting bike lanes, for example, for bike safety and so on. So yeah, it's a very interesting story because, as I've said, at the beginning, she was very shy and felt a little bit distant from the group. And in the end, she felt so connected because the peace building, as I've said already beforehand, is not only connected to saving lives directly, from people who could die by the war, but to contribute in other fields like energy or traffic safety. That's maybe something I would like to pick as well as a very concrete community example.
So on your compass, I can see that innovation was used quite a lot in that respect.
Yes, I think that's also why I had her somehow in my mind while I was choosing, like, okay, the people in her community, they were up for innovation, even the car drivers and so on. Yeah. So like having consultations about that really changed many people's mind. Yeah. Also from car drivers saying like, okay, it's maybe better to drive a little bit slower and to, do not pay attention to bicycle drivers, because in this way I can also contribute to our country's energy resilience and so on. That was super interesting conversations she reported from. So yeah, it's a very interesting example. I could add much more. I don't know how much time we have.
I mean, it's dependent upon your time, but of course we would love to hear other examples. Other examples. I mean, I was very taken, as I said, by your comment about building the inner and the outer. What about the inner process? Working on the inner. How does that work within the program, which is a 9-month program? How does that work?
Yeah. So from the program structure, we always start, of course, with some kickoff where people get to know each other and so on. But then we straightly run into 4-day intensive training on collective leadership. So we are focusing on the outer first, on the outer peace building, but with the sense of that this collective leadership compass that is presented there and that I briefly described already in our conversation is also giving certain advice on the inner path. And then before we jump into what I also told about, like process and other methodologies like the dialogic change model that we use for really getting things done on the ground, we then first, as a second step, jump into the inner peace dimension. And this is very differentiated between different participants. As I said, they come with different backgrounds, and we need to really have persons there. And that's also where we work with partners. We don't do it from our own. We are not psychologists. We don't have like the technical knowledge on this, but we have partners who do. And they work then on topics like overcoming trauma, how to build inner transformation, techniques and also dialogues, again, with these persons, sometimes as a group, sometimes individually, that help those people to understand better where certain patterns that emerge or hinder them from doing outer peace building work, where they come from and how they can work on them, and how this inner peace will help them then in the process of becoming very concrete, like the example from Olo or from Anastasia. This is a very important step in between. Yeah. So only by then, this is maybe halfway through the program, we focus again on the outer piece and work on stakeholder collaboration workshops and stewarding systems change and all these kinds of questions. Yeah. So this in-between part of inner peace is very important, but and with the compass, we have a kind of tool that also focuses on some psychological aspects of it, but we have professional partners, who have more technical expertise on working individually or collectively with a group of young peace builders. Yeah, and of course, it's very hard also for some people to undergo this process, and we had tears and we have had everything. But afterwards, it always felt like, wow, this helped me so much to, deal with my demons and go ahead and work on the outer peace.
I think it's important. I think we're very keen on it sounds. I always say this, but it sounds like a bit of a dreamy sort of concept consciousness. But I think that it is important that the whole process of how we relate to ourselves and to the external world. I mean, the external world is the place we live in, the people that surround us, and to begin to see connections and how we're connected. And I think the SDGs are very good for that as well, as a framework, that everything is interconnected, and nothing stands in isolation in this world. And we are part of this world, and we need to look at how we're connected then to other things. So I think it's really important, I think, the work, that inner work that you're talking about, as also your partnership work as well. You mentioned the specialists who work on the more sort of psychological aspect. What about other partnerships that the Collective Leadership Institute works with in order to further advance your work? Are there others that you would like to mention at all?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned a couple of times already that we got this seed funding from an American foundation. It's the Still Point Foundation, a small family foundation who really made this possible financial wise. Although we did some crowdfunding, so everyone who donated a few bucks, it helped definitely to bring more people on board, because the seed funding does not cover all costs for this program. So yeah, all those who participated our 2 crowdfunding campaigns so far are definitely good partners. What is a little bit different with this program to other programs that we run? If you look at our website, we work with organizations like UN, European Union, German Development Corporation, and others. And it's great to work with them. But for this particular program of the Young Peace Builders, we really decided this should be our program. Yeah, so this should be really where we focus on whom we invite, who should participate in this program, who will be our partners. Whereas in the other context, we work with given structures and so on, which is also fine and great to enliven them. But in this program, it's a little bit strange. Yeah, we don't work so much with outer partners rather than like this really like foundation and crowdfunding persons, plus the inner peace specialists who support us on that way. Whereas in other programs, we have much more partnerships than that. So here, I think definitely also the peace builders themselves, they are our partners. So we, of course, have a certain knowledge that we can offer them and certain capacities, but we don't see it as this kind of typical teacher-student relationship. No, at the end, also, like our facilitators, me, myself personally, learned a lot from these young peace builders. We are still in touch. For example, with Olo, we are currently preparing a kind of scale-up project for him that hopefully gets some funding from Germany. With Anastasia, we're working on some international follow-up programs and so on. So these ties, they remain, and they are also becoming part of our international community of practice and exchange with other collective leadership specialists in the world.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really positive in the sense that you were taking your interactions with them further builds upon your skill set and your experience and your knowledge, which will further enrich new partners or peace builders that you work with. I think that's a really positive way of looking at it, rather than that just I'm the teacher, you're the student. Now you need to learn, which is rather limited in its value, I think. So that's to be welcomed and encouraged. I wonder how do you measure impact in terms of, the impact of your programs on participants? With the Peace Builders, it's a relatively new program, but how do you measure impact, and what have the results shown so far? And this is, a loaded question, obviously, but we must understand that change is a process, and sometimes it's a long process. So we don't expect miraculous overnight change. But is there any that you'd like to talk about at all?
Yeah, this is really an important topic, and I could talk about it for hours. I might differentiate it into two aspects. One is like the theory. Yeah, in theory, we are very well equipped to measure the progress because, for example, with the collective leadership compass, it's not only to analyze systems in a way to find entry points, like I described from my example earlier in this call, but it's also to look how these patterns have changed over time. Yeah, so you can observe, is there more or less innovation now in the system? Is there more or less collective intelligence? Yeah, how, is the system working more holistically or not? You can observe all of this and you can measure it. So like I said, in theory, we are well equipped for this. Again, here the funding thing comes a little bit in. Taking, for example, the Young Peace Builders, what we definitely do in the beginning, we do this individual assessment and also their systems assessment. And then towards the end of the program, which is, as I've said, like 9 months later, we will do the same. And yes, there is definitely some progress in many areas of the compass, also very differentiated between the different Young Peace Builders. And also we do the same with our open courses. Yeah, at the end of each course, we will ask certain questions. That's the theoretical part. I think in practice, and I think you mentioned a very important aspect here, this long term. Yeah, even 9 months is not long term. And asking people before a course and after a course that takes 4 days, it's even more short term. Yeah. Sometimes in some projects that take 1, 2, 3 years, we can track it a little bit more differentiated and a little bit better. But even there, it's a project, and the project ends one day. So the real interesting part of our work would come when these kind of official projects end, and when people do the work on their own, because we want to capacitate them that they can help themselves, right? This is the general idea. And there we are heavy, because there's no funding available for these kinds of studies, almost no funding. I can say one different example for that. We just rely on the people that they stay connected with us some way and report this success or also this failure. Yeah, so we don't only want to talk about success stories. There are definitely also some failures because certain things didn't work out the way the people intended it. So, and this is definitely, that's what I said. In practice, this is a little bit missing. Yeah, and just one example that we were lucky enough that a PhD student, I think from New Zealand, he approached us 2 years ago. Because he was doing research on all these kind of capacity builders in transformation and partnerships and all these kind of things. And he asked us if he could do some research with our community of practice. Yeah, so it's these are people who are certified as collective leadership specialists. Young Peace Builders are one tiny part of it, but these are more than 300 people around the world who really are fluent in both our standard methodologies and also have proven practice experience with it. And he did some research among those and asked, very concrete questions. We also have on our website, when you look at the certification program, in the end, some basic results from this research. And the number that stuck with me was that I think in the end, 33% of these collective leadership specialists have already achieved transformative change with these methodologies in their work. And transformative change was in that case defined as not just a certain change that can be done with kind of usual change management tools, but really something that relies on multi-stakeholder collaboration, and a change that would not have been possible without this multi-stakeholder collaboration. So, which means 33% is great, but also the other 27% have not achieved it yet. Yeah. So even though they went through the whole program and so on. Yeah. So there is no guarantee for this kind of work. And it's really super interesting to dive into the details of this impact. What we maybe as a last idea on that, also for the audience, if we measure impact, we do it on 3 different levels. So one thing is what is obvious, I think, is the concrete impact. Yeah. So what has really changed? Yeah. A school has been built, or these kinds of things that are easy to track, and that every project will ask towards the end. But we really promote adding 2 other aspects to this, and this is looking also at process achievements and relationship achievements. And a good example for this is the Corona pandemic. Yeah. So, and it's very much about resilience, because if you build great relationships, but maybe have not achieved all project goals in the time, if you have built processes that are resilient and robust, that maybe have not achieved all concrete aspects within the project line, it is very likely that with these strong processes and networks and relationships, you can do this afterwards anyway. Whereas if you only focused on achieving the concrete things, like building the school, for example, yeah, but did not focus on the processes and the relationships, perhaps the school is closed after 1 year because they didn't find the right teachers, or, I think this is very understandable what I mean. So looking at these 2 rather soft and often overseen additional things is, I think, very important in measuring the impact of partnerships.
I think that's true. And I like organizations and people who talk about failure and mistakes and not seeing that as a final outcome, that actually sometimes mistakes and failures, or perceived failures, because if you're thinking in terms of a systems approach, there's never a complete end. It's always a process. There's a lot of learning to be had in things when things don't go right, as long as people are open to learning and open to again, it's that inside work, isn't it? That okay, if you make a mistake, don't blame yourself. Don't say this is it. I'm a failure. I'm useless. Well, there's reasons why that didn't work, and perhaps you need to work. We can work on that, and I like that. I think that's really important, particularly in this world when it is such a complex world that we live in, or most societies now are far more complex, perhaps, than they used to be. And there's so many different external factors that can lead to a project or an initiative not working out in the short term. So I think that's really to be commended. I think that's fantastic. And I think the work that the Collective Leadership Institute does is so important now. We live in a world where even within democracies or Western countries that term themselves, we see in the States, for example, civil liberties being eroded. Even in the UK where we are, the right to demonstrate is being eroded. What you perhaps could call civic space, the space for people to say, for their voices to be heard in opposition to things that they think are not correct. They're all being challenged at the moment across the world. And yes, it may not be open warfare. Let's hope it never will be. But, these are ingredients that can actually lead towards that if we're not careful. And I think your work is really important in terms of working on the individual, how they see themselves in relation to the world that they and communities that they live in, and how they respond. And I was going to ask, as sort of a final question, really, for young people who are thinking, well, actually, that there are things in my community that are really not very healthy and not good, and disrupt our peace and our way of life. And I want to do something about that. What advice would you give to, I know it's a big question, Martin, and of course every situation will be different, but as a starting point, perhaps, what advice would you give to young people? When I say young people, because I think that's why we were really interested in the young peacemakers. Old fuddy-duddies like myself, not going to be around that much longer. And that we live in a world that is changing rapidly. And young people are the people that are going to have to really navigate themselves, coming back to your compass, and make the change. And so what advice would you give to younger people?
Yeah, that's really a good question, because and first of all, thanks, Pierre, also for highlighting some of the things that really Collective Leadership Institute stands for. You summed it up quite well. For the young people, what would I advise? I think some of the things that I discussed here, they sound quite complex and perhaps even overwhelming. Yeah. So my first advice would be like, don't be overwhelmed by all of this. You will learn anyways. It's no problem. Yeah. So accept that this is normal at the beginning to feel overwhelmed with all the things that are happening out there. And can I really make a change? These kind of questions are absolutely normal, and don't be afraid of them. Then coming from there, I think the second thing is to say, like, you should have big ambitions, because you're young and you really should change the world. But if you start small. Yeah, because from our experience, every bigger change has really started small, and it starts with a small committed group. So try to put your energies into creating this group. Yeah, this could be 4 to 6 people. No more is needed in the beginning to really make a change in your local community. But these people should be really committed. So working on finding this group is really essential. And the third and maybe last thing coming from there is, of course, if you are ambitious and you want to change something, that's great. But all the things we are discussing here, they don't come overnight. So also be patient and diligent. Even if people say that has no added value, continue if you think and your group thinks that has an added value. This is a contribution. Yeah, every contribution matters, and you never know when the different things come together. So I hope, these are some ideas and tips that will help our future young peace builders and young leaders for sustainability to grow and to make this world a better place.
I think that's very valuable. And I something you alluded to earlier on, I may have misheard and I may have made the wrong assumption about it, but it was about sort of polarization of views in the way that people become very rigid in the way that they think, well, I'm for this and that's bad, and this is all good and that's all bad. When you say young people coming together and forming a group of maybe 4 to 6 people, should those 4 to 6 people have all the same views and agree on everything? And perhaps is there value in people coming together and talking through, obviously talking through about what they agree on, but also about what they don't agree on? Or is that just too fanciful? Am I asking too much there, Martin?
No, Priya, you are on the right way. I think this is exactly what it is about. If you're searching for this group, don't only search among your friends. Yeah, this is really important. Search for different opinions. Even opposing opinions can be valuable if they are constructive. Yeah, of course, I would be always careful with like completely destructive statements and things that don't want to find any solution but just want to destroy. This is too much work in the beginning. But yes, I mean, all these polarizations, they have always been there. Yeah. And it's just that we at the moment focus more on them. But the truth, as always, is always somewhere in between those poles. And make this your mission. I think if you're a young person, to find people from the different poles and bring them together, and something great will emerge, I can guarantee.
Great advice, and it's been fantastic talking with you, Martin. I think that the work you're doing is really thoughtful, well thought out, really well structured. But there's fluidity there as well, and there's space for things to change, and I think that's an important part of the process. That sort of flexibility and that room for dialogue, etc., is really important. And we've learnt a lot, and I'm sure our viewers have learnt a lot from you. How do people learn more about the Collective Leadership Institute, Martin?
Yeah, I think the easiest way is to visit our website, collectiveleadership.com or .de, both will work. And you take it from there. You will find my email on the team, but you can also contact other team members that are related to certain regions. If you are not based in Central Europe, for example, like I am, then yeah, feel free to contact us if you're interested in anything. That would be great.
That's terrific. And I know that you've got a lot of good films on YouTube as well, which I would... some of them are very deep, very sort of theoretical discussions, which I think are really important. But also there's films like Olo's Story, which are very practical focused, etc. So I would really encourage people to have a look at those. Thank you, Martin, for sharing what you do with us. And I wish your work all the best, because in this fast changing world, we need agile thinkers and agile doers. And I think Collective Leadership Institute really encourages that. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Pierre, for the opportunity. Really welcoming this. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thanks very much. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
This is Olo. He's a civil engineer in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo that founded a grassroots community center supporting women, children, and youth.
The Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo invests in conflict situations since 1996 till today. There is rebel groups in different mountains, and there is ethnic conflict, there is discriminations and injustice. Also, there is situation of natural disasters, flood, and so on.
People living there are afflicted with conflict, wars, and natural disasters, discrimination, violence, and displacement, especially women, youth, and children.
I created a community support center in 2016. When I got 21 years old, without any experience in social work. Like that, I needed to give back what I missed when I was a child. Over many years, I was discriminated in my community, even at the school. Nobody could eat with me, nobody could become my friends, just my family members. And when I got the idea to do something to give back to the community started, but I didn't know what it would look like. And today it is community support center. Our work focused on supporting women and children and youth affected with ethnic conflict, war, natural disasters, injustice, and discrimination. We know there is many challenges, and we have certain enough work within support center.
Programs like their Play for Peace and mental health support use sports and education to promote peace, healing, and gender equality. Their work includes trauma therapy, environmental management, child safeguarding, skills training, and sexual and reproductive health support, all aimed at fostering resilience, empowerment, and community cohesion in conflict-affected areas.
Our organization supported over 2,300 women and children dealing with their trauma and resiliency without any financial assistance or any potential partner till today. And we contribute as members to run our activities.
Olo is one of our young peace builders, and we couldn't be prouder to have him in the program. He embodies a rare, down-to-earth attitude while transforming his personal experiences into impactful action. Despite facing incredibly difficult circumstances, his resilience and commitment to creating positive change are truly inspiring.
I'm passionate about building peace, improve social cohesion, conflict resolution. And it already started this implementing, the compass, like the aspect to encourage us. We've been doing that in different ways, but thanks to collective leadership institute, we are doing that in good way now. If we get people to work with us or to connect to our vision, to get involved to our vision, we turn those together, we can heal hearts and build futures. That is our slogan, healing hearts and building futures. And we can't do that alone.
So check out Olo's work. Go to his website, stay tuned for more stories from Young Peace Builders, and don't forget to support Young Peace Builders 2025.